I told you it was unmanned. It's under computer control, completely automated and completely oblivious to us. It has no idea what it is doing to Earth, and it has no idea we were even on board. We should take control of it and bring it back into Earth's orbit. There we can dissect it and learn all the alien technology. It will be a huge advance.
Dr. Becker was very impressed with himself. I hated that he was right. I didn't see any computer terminals or any controls at all for that matter, I said, a little too testily. Just how do you plan to take control of a ship that we don't understand the first thing about? Did I miss something?
He's right. We can't begin to hack into something without some idea of what the computer system even looks like. There were pipes and conduits between the various pieces of machinery, but I didn't see anything that looked like a computer input, or even a junction for some type of plug-in. We don't know where to start, and we don't dare just start opening conduits and splicing wires. We could send the ship cascading straight into the Earth for all we know,
Dr. Carter said.
Behind that front bulkhead, that's where the control systems are. That's where we have to gain access.
Dr. Becker replied. I didn't see any type of wiring or conduits going into that section of the ship, I said.
They may flow through the skin of the hull or be wireless, but they have got to be in that forward section. That is where all the antennae and dishes are arrayed. If we can gain access into that area, I'm sure I can take control of the ship.
Dr. Becker was fidgeting even more than before. If we had been on Earth or had a little gravity, he would have been pacing the floor.
We have explosives on board,
Sergeant Clanton offered. We just looked at one another. Do we dare such a brazen attack on this ship? Just how intelligent is it? What kind of defense mechanisms does it have? I said. Up until now, we've given it no reason to respond to us. If we damage it, we could instigate an automatic defense routine.
My orders are to assist you in determining if communications can be opened with the ship or its inhabitants and persuade the aliens to cease their mining operations or change them in a way that doesn't endanger the Earth. Failing that, my instructions are to destroy the alien ship. A follow-up attack on the surface mining facility will ensure the end of the threat to Earth. I have enough explosives on board to ensure the destruction of the alien vessel. No messages to Earth are to be sent regarding the use of explosives.
Sergeant Clanton was very matter-of-fact about sharing his orders with us, although I don't believe he was supposed to. Are you in favor of using the explosives to open the forward bulkhead? And can you do it without endangering the structural integrity of the alien ship? I asked.
I believe I can open a hole in the forward bulkhead. It would be a small opening, perhaps 5 feet in diameter. If we can take control of the ship and stop the surface mining operation, it would be a great prize.
The sergeant answered with a big grin.
A ship like this could be lost for any number of reasons,
added Dr. Becker.
It might even discourage the aliens from returning.
I, for one, would welcome a chance to study the alien metallurgy,
Dr. Tanakai answered.
It hasn't responded to us so far. It might not have any defensive capability other than the laser on its belly. Then again, 100 lasers may pop up out of the massive machinery and fry us all.
Dr. Carter contributed. Then she paused, giving it more thought.
If it's never dealt with intelligent species before, then it would have no reason to develop internal defenses. I didn't see any sign of such a defense. The hatches were all easy to open. The internal space was unpressurized and unguarded. There were no obstacles at all. I believe we may be the first intelligent life it has encountered.
Great. We're its first contact and we're going to blow it up. How appropriate. Let us introduce you to the human race. Boom. I was frustrated. It seemed wrong and everything in me said it was wrong, but they had good arguments and Earth was threatened by its very existence. Okay, I agree, we have to stop it, but I want to have a look at the underside before we set off any explosives.
We can take a route under the ship to check it out on our way back to the alien command module,
Sergeant Clanton said. Turning to Private Brunzik, he asked,
What did you find?
I located the robotic probe easily enough. It was exploring the internal surface of the cylinder. When I entered the cylinder, I found a machine of some type, which was suspended in the center of the cylinder and extended about 30 feet toward the rear. It filled almost half of the space. I had trouble getting past it, After that, it was all open cargo space, probably intended for holding the product of their mining operation.
Pivot Brunzik reported.
I brought the robotic probe back and secured it in the cargo hold of the shuttle.
It's been a long day, people. Let's take a break, get some food, get some sleep, and in 8 hours you can suit up for your next EVA,
Commander Douglas ordered.
Sergeant, can you and Pat Brunzik recharge and prepare the spacesuits?
Yes, sir. We'll have them ready,
replied Sergeant Clanton.
Does that give you time for your own preparations?
The commander asked.
Yes, sir. Marines never sleep.
The sergeant smiled. We left the shuttle. Sergeant Clanton, Pat Brunzik, and me. We used the jetpacks to reach the end of the cylinder that the shuttle was docked on. At the junction between that cylinder and the next, we stopped and used our magnetic boots to walk between the cylinders to the underside. There we cautiously took a peek. After all, this was where the big laser was lurking. We slowly stuck our heads up enough to see what was around. The conveyor belt from the moon's surface could be seen bringing containers the size of tractor-trailer rigs up from the surface. Once they reached the underside of the ship, a second conveyor belt whisked them off to an opening under the cylinder that our shuttle was docked on. There they disappeared into the cylinder, apparently to be stored for the voyage back to the point of origin. It was all completely automated. There was no sign of any alien workers. Sergeant Clanton tapped my shoulder and pointed forward. There, hanging from the alien command module, was the laser cannon. It was a large blister with a conical barrel sticking out from it. As we watched, it jerked around, evidently searching for a target. I'd seen enough and didn't want the laser noticing my head, so we went back to the top and moved forward to the hatch we had found near the front of the ship. Once inside, we made our way to the forward bulkhead quickly. "Are you sure you can blast through this without damaging the rest of the ship?" I asked the sergeant. He was probably getting tired of me worrying him, but he never showed it.
This explosive was developed to blast through the hull of a battleship. It will cut a clean hole in the bulkhead with little damage to anything else,
the sergeant responded. "What about secondary explosions? What if there are unstable materials in there?" I asked. The sergeant smiled. "Then all your worries will be over, sir." He paused a minute, then added,
"We'll exit to the outside of the hull before it detonates."
Sergeant Clanton and Pat Brunzik laid a cord of explosives in a 6-foot circle against the bulkhead. Then the sergeant nodded to Pat Brunzik, and Brunzik left for the hatchway.
"I just want to make sure the hatch is open before I set the detonator,"
he explained. When Brunzik had opened the hatch, he waved to the sergeant, and Sergeant Clanton pulled a ring from the detonator, activating it.
10 minutes, Doctor. I suggest we get moving."
He didn't have to tell me twice. We made it to the hatch where Private Brunzik was waiting on the other side to help us through in an expeditious manner, meaning he grabbed us and yanked us through to the outside. Once we were standing on the hull, Sergeant Clanton ran a safety line joining each of us together, like a mountain climbing team.
"Just in case."
"Just in case," he said to me. I started to ask him if he thought everything was going to fly apart, but I didn't have time. He turned and took off at a fast walk to where we had secured the jetpacks. I was tail-end Charlie with Private Brunzik between the sergeant and me. We had made it about 3 steps from the hatch when there was a shudder under our feet, and then a wave traveled across the hull like a ripple on a pond. It loosened our magnetic boots from their hold on the hull and sent me and Brunzik floating away from the ship. Somehow Sergeant Clanton had kept one foot attached to the hull, and he was pinwheeling his arms, trying to get his other foot down against the hull again before the slack in the lifeline pulled taut and jerked him off as well. One of the jetpacks came loose from where it was secured and began floating off. The other 2 held. Sergeant Clanton got his other foot securely back against the hull and pulled us down. Once we all had our feet back on the ground, the sergeant sent Brunzik to put on a jetpack and retrieve the one floating away. He then turned to me and motioned to the hatch. We went back into the ship, anxious to see what secrets laid behind the bulkhead. Sergeant Clanton was shaking his head and staring at the bulkhead.
"I don't believe this shit. There were enough explosives to punch through 4 inches of steel. There's not even a dent."
I gazed along the surface at an angle, trying to see if it was distorted at all. It wasn't. "Now what?" I asked. The sergeant stood silent for a moment.
"We go back for more. Next time, I'll double the charge."
I had a lot of thoughts on the matter, but I kept them to myself.